Hey guys, I'm Kyle with the design team here at Obsessed Garage, and as you may have seen, we have finally launched a vacuum solution. And today, I want to walk you through some of the designs that we've been doing and how we've been incorporating the vacuum in prep for it finally launching in our designs for the last months or a year even. As we've been kind of prepping this new solution and everything. But I really just wanted to show you some of the examples of how we're using this and how we're designing it, hopefully to give you some idea on what you can incorporate into your garage or your space, or maybe to give you an idea of what you need to ask us for or whatever if you're working with us in design, and how to incorporate it into your garage. So the first garage I'm going to show you is our client Chris. So as you can see here, he's got a pretty large space, but we're really going with a pretty simple setup. So let me show you a 3D view here real quick to kind of give you some idea and some context. So, we got some errors here, it's all right. We've got this room over here that is kind of like the mechanical room. We've got the Krenzla in there. We've got a FIAC New Silver 3/100 compressor. We've got a sink that's in there and some hose reels and stuff. He really wanted to hide as much of the mechanical stuff behind the wall as possible, which of course means, hey, let's put the vacuum in there as well. He didn't want to do a hose reel for the vacuum though, since it was going to be hidden in that wall. And it's only 50 feet, so that kind of constricts you a little bit on how far you can bring it out if he's got a car on the other side or whatever, and it's just a little more difficult pulling that size of a hose through the doorway. So we wanted to do a really clean install with hide-a-hose. And what we've done in here is planned out the vacuum to be on this wall above the compressor. Power is up here on the left. That can really be anywhere. Ideally, I would probably want to put the power just below over here, which you'll see in all of our other designs as well, that the power is typically on the left bottom. But we've got the piping that goes up into the ceiling, and there's a really nice long sweeping 90. So, for any of you guys doing a hide-a-hose situation like this, you want to do a long sweeping 90 like this anywhere you've got a turn. But you can see where this comes up into the ceiling. There's like an attic space here that we've not modeled out. And then it comes over into the main structure of the building. Because of the floor above and because of the I-beams and stuff like that, there really wasn't a good place to hide all of this piping to house that 50 feet of hose. He decided that it would be best to just have it exposed. Now they, at the time of install, may do it a little differently than this, that's fine. But we at least planned out how much piping they're gonna need, how many 90s they're gonna need, and all of that. So you can see it come out this way. It's gonna go just below the I-beams and then circle back into the wall here. And there's another 90 that comes down off of this to bring the piping down to this access panel. So right next to the door is where we have this access panel. And this is going to work out to be a nice location for him. If you guys have never experienced the hide-a-hose function, it's incredible. It's so cool to be able to pull the hose out, lock it into place, turn on the machine right from that switch, and then when you're done, unlock it, plug the end of that hose, and it just sucks back up into the wall. Is the coolest thing. So this is Chris's setup. It's pretty simple, but basically we're just planning out, where this piping is going to go up, where it's going to 90 over, and then how it's going to make this loop. You have to be able to figure out, based on where your vacuum is and then where your outlet is, where that access panel is, of how do I fit over 50 feet of pipe so that you can house the hose that goes in that. So if you have like this, where you have your vacuum very close to the access point, well, then you're going to have to go out and around and go out past with all the piping and then bring it back. So that's what we did with Chris here, figuring out the piping situation around the ceiling and stuff. And like I said, game time install, when it comes time to do all this, he may want to be able to do it a little bit differently and maybe hide it more back in that corner, but we've at least figured out all the pieces and parts that he needs to be able to do this and given him an idea of what it could look like. All right, next we're going to jump into Nadim's garage, and this is another hidden kind of install where we're doing hide-a-hose. However, this one's a little different in that we have multiple access points for the hide-a-hose install. So for Nadim, we did in this main large space where he's going to have some car lifts and a working area and be able to do some washing and stuff like that. We set up this kind of air station over here. This air on the wall is going to be for a future lift that he's going to install. So this made a really good kind of, near the entrance but secluded type of location for the vacuum, or for one of the access panels. Let's see, I know he's got some more in here. Yeah, we've got another one over on this side near the working lift, the recessed scissor lift. And then I believe over in this space here where we have the hidden cabinets, we've got another access panel. Yes, on this wall here, so that way he can vacuum in this room or clean up any parts or anything like that. Let me close out some of these cameras here. And then upstairs, he has this really nice living area where we've incorporated the vacuum into this space as well. So we've got an access panel here on this wall, and this will be great for cleaning his floors and stuff like that. Just like a regular central vac system in a home is essentially what this is. It's what our solution is, but it works awesome for cars as well. All of the piping behind the scenes, though, is a little crazy because he's got so many different runs, so many different access points. It was pretty difficult for us to figure out where all the piping needs to go. For us, if you're working with us in design, we're going to do what we can to figure out the piping, but a lot of times it's going to require you and your contractor or architect or engineer to really figure out exactly where all that piping needs to go. So just keep in mind that you have your vacuum location, you have your access panel location, and somehow you've got to get in as straight a line as possible with as few 90s as possible, at least 50 feet of PVC pipe running through the wall, ceiling, wherever, between those locations. And whatever you've got to do to make that work because of the construction of your building is what you have to do. So we can design it and give you some idea through our software of what we think it should be like, but we don't really always know exactly what your framing is going to be like, or what the flooring structure is going to be, or what kind of attic beams you have and stuff like that. So take it as a guideline and then work with your contractor or architect to really figure out exactly, okay, where can we actually put this pipe? We came up with a few different ways of viewing this for him. This one's a little more complicated, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it. So here's a more 3D aerial view to kind of show you how some of this is planned out, hopefully to give you an idea of what you need to think about what's going on behind the scenes. This one is very complex because we have 4 outlet locations, or inlet locations, I guess, with the hide-a-hose panels. Yours might not be that expansive, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more simple, especially if you just have like a 2-car garage or something like that, or like at Matt's house right now, where he did a hide-a-hose installation there, and he's got his vacuum in the attic, and he's got the piping coming down. The other thing to think about too is if you're going to have multiple locations, you're going to have to break those off and tee off from those very early in the piping run, because you can't just run one pipe all the way and then break off to 2 locations, because those 50-foot hoses are going to intersect and hit each other, and it's just not going to work. So one thing to think about if you guys are going to be having more than 2 or 3 access points or just really long runs. Say you have a really big detail shop or car storage facility, and you're going to have 100 to 150 feet of pipe or something like that to one location. At that point, it probably does make sense to bump up to a higher power unit. So our machine now is fantastic for the power delivery that it has and working on cars and vacuuming floors and stuff like that. But once you start doing a more complex system and doing more runs or longer runs, you probably need to bump up to a 240 volt machine. And that won't necessarily give you any extra power from an actual vacuuming standpoint, a working standpoint, but it will mean that those longer runs and those multiple locations are going to work better and work more like the standard unit on a smaller system. If you guys need to get something that's a little bit more custom, like a Nadim, we can get you hooked up. We have availability to order whatever we need to from Modern Day and get a power unit that is specific for your situation. It probably will end up being a pretty standardized, like, hey, for a 240 volt installation, like this is the one you want. And we'll probably still be able to do like extra insulation and stuff like that. We can still include the muffler and stuff. So we'll still be able to make that a more custom, like OG specific variant and not just an off the shelf part. But keep that in mind. If you're going to be doing a big extensive thing, work with us and we can help you get what you need to make that work, just like we're going to be doing here with Nadim. All right, this next garage, you may have seen in the most recent design video where I went through our design process and kind of showed you what we do in our software. But this is Todd's garage, and we've included a vacuum in here. If you have a keen eye, you'll notice that I did modify the vacuum setup a little bit, because now that we've had more time to install in several different locations, we know better of how you need to do it. So you'll notice that Matt originally had his vacuum here installed with the canister down below and the hose reel up top, and that's just like a part of our testing. That kind of seemed to make sense. You have your hose reel here, you keep the vacuum down nice and low. Well, it made it really hard to get the bag out when you needed to change the bag. And it was a pain in the butt to have to reach all the way down to turn on the machine and stuff like that. So now we've learned that, okay, well, you can have the bottom of the machine as close to that hose reel as you want to, as long as it's not touching and it's not going to be in the way. And that still provides you to, allows you to be able to have a good location for the hose reel itself. You want your hose reel to be centered at about 42 to 44 inches, depending on how tall you are. Think about the ergonomics of your body and everything. And if you're just stand straight and then bring your elbows up or bring your arms up, wherever that 90-degree point is, that's where you want the center of your hose reel, because that's going to give you the good range of motion and the most leverage for reeling that hose back on. And then you put your vacuum right above that. So just like we've designed here in Todd's garage, this vacuum is at 54 inches high. And then we've got our power right next to the switch over here on the left. And then not modeled in this would be the, just like we have here, the black piping that would then go into the vacuum on the left side. If for some reason you were left-handed or whatever, you could flip that hose reel around and do your inlet piping over on the other side if you wanted to, which would be totally fine. But this is a good example of how we would do just a simple hose reel setup, and this is kind of how you could incorporate it too into your kind of detailing wall, if you will. If you have a garage that's dedicated to that, or a wash bay, or a larger building where you want to be able to have the custom install solution, the shelving for your press-all bottles or whatever you're using, your bucket filler, the vacuum, and then your locker cabinets for your towels and chemical storage and stuff like that. So this is a really good example of like a really functional, all-in-one detailing setup on a wall. And let me kind of give you an idea of what kind of space this takes up, including the wand holder. Let's see, grab our tape measure here, bring this down to about right there. So we're at basically 17.5 feet And you could make that a little smaller or bigger, depending on what you wanted to do. But that would be a fantastic, just all-in-one detailing setup. Maybe eventually we'll probably sell that as like a package or a solution someday where you get custom install, shelving, bucket filler, bucket package, vacuum solution with a hose reel, and a couple lockers for storing all of your accessories and detailing chemicals and towels and stuff like that. That would be a sweet setup. So this is a great example of what you can do with just a simple vacuum solution and hose reel. Like I said, I don't have it modeled out to show just the vacuum by itself. If you were going to do that, you would just lower the vacuum. You would want the height to be at that same kind of 44 inches or so would be good for the height of the top of the vacuum. That way you can open it up. When it is a little bit higher like that, you do probably need to get on a step stool or a little ladder or something like that to be able to reach up and grab and pull the bag out and be able to reattach everything. But most of us have that type of thing in our garage anyway, so it's usually not too big of a deal. If you're doing an install with a hide-a-hose, or you're doing an install with no hose reel and you're just going to loop your hose on it or have it elsewhere, I think that 44 inches is a really good number for how high the top of the vacuum should be. And you're generally not going to have much below it anyway. But that'll be a really good spot to give you the best ergonomics for taking the lid off, reaching in, grabbing the bag, being able to see what you're doing, and maybe clean out any larger debris that went in there or something like that. All right, this next garage is Michael's, and he's been working with us to design this new garage for his house. It's very large, and he's even got like another garage that is like his shop area and stuff that we put some lead rack in and MSS Plus cabinets. But in here, this is mainly going to be parking, storage, and kind of the detailing area. So we have, the custom install on the wall. We've got the 3 shelves on the wall for press-all bottles. Bucket filler is actually over here on the left because of where his plumbing is and stuff. It just made it a little bit easier for him, and he wanted a separate spot for that. So rather than having the bucket filler under the shelving, we actually did the access panel for the vacuum, which kind of gives it a nice and discreet location. And this one is a little different. The location for the canister of the vacuum is going to be up in the attic or over in the storage room that's elsewhere. But this is a really good example of how you can integrate it into your wash setup and have, below the shelving, or you could even do it, next to the pressure washer over here if you wanted to. In Michael's garage, we'd even played around with the idea of putting it over here on this side, but in the end, we decided that it made sense over here next to all the detailing stuff. So this was not so much showing you the install and piping and stuff like that, as much as just giving you another idea on how you could incorporate the hide-a-hose type of situation into your custom install and bucket filler and stuff like that. Another idea that you can actually do with this that we've done with previous garages is if you wanted to have a hose reel and not have the hide-a-hose for some reason, maybe you just like the look of a hose reel or the action or something like that, you could still have your vacuum elsewhere in another room and use that same PVC piping to the hose reel and have that integrated into, maybe get rid of that bottom shelf and have the hose reel right there under that second shelf would be, kind of a cool idea. But Michael's garage is really cool. If you were ever going to do hex lighting in a garage, this is how you do it. So these are Utopia Cube Hex, I think is the product name, but really high quality, really expensive, powder-coated steel enclosures with a light source that is as good as our Cree linear fixtures. So if you want to do hex lighting, but you don't want to do the crap that is absolute crap, don't do it. All the stuff that you see on Instagram and all that, this is the OG solution. It's still a hex and Matt still hates it, but if you want to do it and you want to do it right, this is what you do. So I just wanted to show that to you because it's pretty cool, and I really like the way this garage has turned out. I'll have to check with Michael. I don't think he's installed this stuff yet. So we'll probably do a some kind of before and after design walkthrough, on that once we get to that point with him. All right, I've got one more garage to show you, and this is Steve's garage, where we've got a dedicated wash bay and then a more just kind of general garage, like parking and storage area in the other bay. But over here is where we have the vacuum setup, and I don't think, what height did we have this at? I think we did put it at just about 44 inches, so that's that number that I was telling you before. This one's a little different because you have the vacuum right here, it's exposed, and in the room, so you could put maybe hook up another hose to it if you wanted to, or you had an issue where you were servicing the Haida hose or whatever. I guess that would give you this flexibility to do that. But it provides very easy access, and so you can turn on the machine right there, or you can change the bag out or whatever without having to go into an attic or an extra storage room somewhere else. So that would be the benefit of having it here. Plus it's going to look really cool, next to the pressure washer system and stuff like that. One thing I didn't think about initially that I'm seeing as I'm looking at this, because we have this kind of blank space up here, we could probably do like another shelf, or maybe we need to come up with some kind of storage solution for the accessories that we have. Maybe some kind of upper cabinet, or, I guess we could do like a MSS Plus upper cabinet. There might work pretty well. We just have to make sure that we're not blocking the top of this, because remember, you have to open that to be able to get the bag out and change that out. But this one's different because we have an exposed machine, but Haida hose right next to it. But what you need to think about is, again, if you have your canister here and you have your access panel for the Haida hose there, you've got 50 plus, probably closer to 60 feet of pipe that you need to put somewhere. Think about that when you're planning your install of, if you're going to have everything next to each other like this, okay, your piping is going to have to go into the wall and either down into a basement or up into the attic, loop around so that you can make up that 50 feet and then bring it back down to your access point with as few 90-degree turns as possible. If you're making a loop, obviously you're going to end up with 4 90s there, plus your 90 up and stuff like that. So 5, 6 90s. So you're kind of pushing the limits a little bit with some installs like this. But if you're using those long sweeping 90s, you should be okay. But this is an example of how you can kind of incorporate everything into one and do the Haida hose and have it all exposed right there. We also did another access point for Steve over next to the other cabinets in the main room. That's pretty self-explanatory. You have your piping go up and then come back down to that location. But Steve's got a pretty cool garage here. It's very light on the lighting here in the main space. Not enough for my liking, but that's kind of what he wanted to do, just to keep it budget oriented in terms of that, because in this area it's not really important to him, because it's really mainly just going to be parking, occasionally hanging out in that space. But most of the work is going to be done in the wash bay over here, where we've got Swiss tracks in here. We've got some locker cabinets and a nice little detailing setup here with a waste bin, a sink, larger drawers for like maybe polishers and stuff like that. More lighting in this space. And then we did, instead of a ceiling mounted boom, because that would severely limit the amount of space that he would be able to cover with that boom, we did a wall mount extension plus a ceiling mount, which gives him that wider breadth to be able to work through, which is really cool. I know you guys have heard me talk about it before, but if you work with us in design, seeing these images and seeing all this stuff in 3D is really uncanny, like how accurate it is to what it's going to look like in real life once you have it built. So if you want to be able to see that and you want to be able to model it out and get help from us to design your wash bay or your work area or your recess lift or whatever, reach out and we can help you with that. Design@obsessedgarage.com. You can work with myself and Ed and Scott and Donnie, and we can really dial this stuff in and give you what your ultimate garage can look like. We don't charge anything for these designs. We do have a $1,000 deposit that helps really just filter so that the people that we start working on designs for, we know are serious. That way we're not getting any tire kickers or anything like that and spending 30 hours on a design and then you go buy new age cabinets or something like that. You shouldn't buy new age cabinets anyway, but especially if we've designed something for you, that, we want you to be able to have the best and experience the best. Whether it's the vacuum solution or the Krenzla setup or the MSS Plus cabinets, we can do a cool design for you and you can really get a good feel for what it's going to look like and how all of these things are going to interact with each other and have a good perspective on what it's going to be when it's actually built. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to show you guys some different examples of how we've been incorporating the vacuum solution into design. And now that we actually have it, now that we've done several installs, at Helen, in Matt's house garage, and at the garage here now twice, we do have a really good idea of what kind of spacing you need. So we'll be able to provide you with the wall elevations and stuff like that on the product page eventually. I don't think we have that up right now, but wall elevations on height and stuff like that for different versions of the install. And we'll be able to work with you too and design if you want to be able to do something custom or figure out where your piping needs to go. So like I said, definitely reach out. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.